folks, and welcome to another fine edition of Cloud to Ground. I'm Joe Snedeker, Newswatch 16 meteorologist with Jackie!
Hey.
Why is she here? That's what you're wondering. Why am I stepping on her feet?
It's okay.
We got something coming your way. We're going to check in with the team a little bit later on and talk about all the latest for the podcast. But here's the deal. Last week, this woman had a problem with my section of the lightning round where we talk about and answer viewer questions. Now, remember last week it was what is partly cloudy versus partly sunny versus mostly cloudy? And I gave a nice explanation. What's your problem?
You did. I was confused though, because so partly cloudy and partly sunny. Partly cloudy, mostly sunny. So if it's partly cloudy, obviously it's mostly sunny. They're interchangeable. Partly sunny and partly cloudy, interchangeable. Because if it's not sunny, it's cloudy.
All right, so let's look at it this way. We're in front of a log cabin. Let's pretend the cabin represents the sun.
Okay.
What if it were partially painted? What would you see with the cabin if it were partially painted white? Versus mostly painted.
Well, partially painted and mostly painted is different. That's different.
So if it were partially painted, you'd say, oh, some of it's white, but it's mainly brown.
For partially painted?
Yeah.
For mostly painted, it's mostly painted. It's more than half.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about half. That's subjective.
It's subjective. Well, according to what I researched, partly sunny and partly cloudy are interchangeable. And meteorologists have the wet bias because if you're predicting sun and it rains, you look bad. If you predict rain and it suns, you look bad. Or if you're an optimistic or pessimistic person. But I mean, if it's partly
cloudy.
Now, mostly cloudy, of course. If something's mostly,
that's an easy one.
It's more or less.
Mostly painted, mostly cloudy.
Right.
Partly sunny versus partly cloudy. You have something there.
If it's partly cloudy, obviously the rest is going to be sunny.
Mostly sunny.
No, not partly and partly. Partly and mostly, I could see the difference. But partly and partly is the same.
I would just want to say this. When you go to college and you study meteorology, you don't learn that. There is no course on partly this versus mostly that. So this is more
that's
of
more
like
conversational.
It's conversational and cultural.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right though. If someone says it's going to be partly cloudy and another person says it's going to be partly sunny, what is the difference?
Right. It said,
I don't know.
And according to my research, it said 30 to 60% cloud coverage is considered partly sunny, partly cloudy.
There might actually be some National Weather Service designation, but I don't even use those terms, if that helps. I'll say stuff like mix of sun and clouds, mostly sunny. So she brings up this point. I don't use it. But I know this is fully painted.
Correct. Correct. That we can agree on.
Are we still friends?
Of course we're still friends. Of course we're. I'm trying to learn. I'm just trying my best.
Let's instead talk about upper level wind flow, conversion, surface pressure, uplift, adiabatic lapse rate. This is the good stuff.
I guess.
No?
I think I'm gonna go make some crafts or something. Maybe cook something.
Particular variety is called Prince Cut.
All right, I hope Jackie still likes me, but that gets a little confusing with the whole designation of partly sunny, partly cloudy. All right, let's switch gears. We're going to Kurt Aaron. He has a brand new segment with his and your four-legged friends. PAWcast time.
The warm weather of spring brings a smile to our face after such a long and cold winter. Our pets are excited as well. After being cooped up for months, they're ready to get out and enjoy the weather, the sunshine, the warmer temps, and fresh air. Unfortunately, warmer weather also brings out uninvited guests, ticks. And get this, according to the CDC, tick bites in humans this spring, the highest levels in a decade, especially in the Northeast. Check it out. The area in black is where we live, and it's also the highest reported region for tick bites. Disease ticks can spread and be very harmful to us and our pets. The big one in Pennsylvania, Lyme disease. What is Lyme disease? It's bacteria that spread from a tick bite that gets in your system. It can cause fever, rash. It can even cause you to be sick. Not only that, later stages, it can impact your nervous system and your heart. So it's something we really want to be careful of. More bad news. It can be even worse for our pets. And that's because where the ticks live. Trees, shrubs, grass, wood piles, leaves, and more. all places your dog or cat like to explore when they're outdoors. But to understand the tick and the threat to our furry friends, we have to understand more about it itself. There are 4 most common ticks in Pennsylvania. The big one, the black-legged deer tick. That is the one to be the well-known carrier of Lyme disease. But where do these ticks come from? How does it spread? And how do they survive the frigid temperatures of winter, especially this past winter, which was the coldest in 30 years? For these answers and more, we go to Scranton Animal Hospital, talk to Dr. Keith Dorton. For the record, Dr. Dorton has been our family veterinarian for over 20 years and has taken excellent care of Ranger his whole life. So let's get some answers from Dr. Dorton. First, how do they survive the winter?
Early spring and fall are when ticks are most active. A lot of people think it's a summer thing. It's really not. In fact, in the summer, if it's really hot and dry, they can go dormant and they may be less active. And of the top 10 counties in the country that have the most tick cases reported, 7 of them are Pennsylvania.
Even the coldest temperatures, ticks can stick it out. And if the temperature starts climbing above 32 degrees, they become more active, just like we do. And when the weather gets warm, like we are now in spring, I like to bring the boys with me. There's Rocco, there's Ranger. They love coming to the backyard. But just like your backyard, this backyard can be a host for ticks. We got to be very careful. I want to show you something here in our backyard. This looks lovely. Atlas does a great job with our yard back here, but this is a haven for ticks. Shrubs, tall grass, we talked about it in the earlier piece. Now, if you're going to be taking your dogs out, there's a couple things you can do. Simply stay on the walkways, the trails. Don't deviate from that. If the dogs do go into the shrubs and bushes, you want to make sure that you keep them away from that stuff. Keep them under control, because ticks this time of the year are really bad. And as we talked about, 2026 is turning out to be the worst tick spring in 10 years. So we really want to be careful. We want you guys to be safe, enjoy the outdoors. And if you do happen to find a tick on your dog or cat, you want to remove it safely by following these instructions. Simply get it with a pair of tweezers all the way down to the very skin part, and then you want to pull gently and straight away. Don't yank it out. Pull straight away, because you want to try and get them out with it as well. And ticks generally take over 48 hours to transmit Lyme disease or the other things that we talked about. So if the tick is very small, likely it didn't transmit anything, but you should still set up an appointment with your vet and get it checked out. There's also medication that you can give them after they've been bitten that will help deviate any Lyme disease or any other diseases that these ticks can carry. And most importantly, be proactive. Make sure your pets have plenty of baths or protections from ticks, as they can get with collars and pills.
We have the deer populations. We have the type of cover in the woods on people's property that support the mice that are critical to the development of the deer tick. And if you can interrupt that, you can have a big impact on the deer population, for example, in your yard, that kind of thing.
Well, that'll do it for this first ever episode of PAWcast. We've learned a lot about ticks, and we just want you to be safe. Next week, it's back to science class. The last question we had was this.
I wanted to know how are hurricanes formed?
We're going to answer that. And in 3 weeks, our next PAWcast, we're going to talk about how the heat impacts your best friend. See you then.
Thanks, Kurt. And we have plenty more segments with Kurt Aaron coming up in future shows. But now, stay with us for a lot more on Cloud to Ground. All right, welcome back to Cloud to Ground. Are you enjoying it? Come on, we're all doing these segments for you. And if you think about last year, something happened in May. Rub your temples. It was the 3rd wettest May on record. It was wet. I couldn't even cut the grass last year in May, I remember. It was so wet. 3rd wettest on record. Allie's here to talk about what happened. Allie, hit it, girl.
Last year's April showers didn't exactly bring May flowers. They brought more May showers. It rained almost every single day during the month of May last year, and it ended up being one of the wettest on record. Temperatures were below average for much of the month too. Let's take a look back at last year's chilly and rainy May. 23 out of 31. That's how many days it rained last May. 2025 is now one of the rainiest ever on record here in northeastern and central PA, in the top 10 for both Williamsport and Scranton. With a total of 7.18 inches of rain recorded at the Williamsport Regional Airport, 2025 is the 7th rainiest May on record there. And at the Wilkes-Barre Scranton International Airport, 7.58 inches of rain fell last May. That is the 3rd rainiest May since record keeping began more than 100 years ago. On Tuesday, May 6th of last year, severe thunderstorms prompted several tornado warnings and produced significant flash flooding in parts of the area. Here in Wayne County, 3 inches of rain fell in 3 hours in Honesdale. That's about a month's worth of rainfall in one day, or should I say one evening, and Newswatch 16 was there.
It was quick. I mean, it came down, a little bit, and then it was a pretty good downpour. So there's not much you can do about that. It's nature.
Honesdale's a valley. Main Street lays down in the center of the valley, so water's got to go downhill, and it's coming from both sides.
Roads were closed, this church was damaged, and a collapsed drainage system forced everyone staying at the Wayne Inn to relocate. John Feeney of Honesdale has been a member of St. John's Church for several years. He stopped by to see the damage.
I was concerned for the church because the first video I saw, the concrete wasn't collapsed, but I knew that was going to happen because you could see it from the water flow. And of course I'm concerned about what it's going to cost the church.
Then just a few days later on May 9th, even more rain fell, and Honesdale was once again one of the harder hit areas. Crews told us they were trying to make sure no further damage happened to St. John's Church.
What we're trying to do is just mitigate any additional damage to the church property. So the stone was brought in this morning by Pioneer Construction to hold back some of that water and keep the church property from falling back in and being washed away.
Later in the month, Party on the Patio wasn't on the patio. For the first time in more than a decade, the concert at Mohegan, Pennsylvania was moved inside because of the rain and temperatures in the 40s.
The weather situation today was very unique. Not only was there rain, but we're expecting temperatures, probably into the 40s tonight. That is not comfortable for guests. It's not comfortable for the band, to be playing.
Here at Pullman Farms near Clark Summit, farmer Craig Pullman told Newswatch 16 to be careful what you wish for. He started the month of May needing rain for his strawberry fields, but not as much as we received. We visited the farm in South Abington Township on the last day of the month when he told us he's used to dealing with weather extremes.
There hasn't been a break in there for the crop to actually utilize what it's been given in the form of water. And on top of that, we all know it's been colder than all of us like to see for the month of May, but that's, it is what it is, and we've just got to hope for the best at this point.
It was cooler than average last May, but no records were broken. In fact, 39 degrees was the coldest it got the entire month in the Scranton area, and 42 was the coldest it got in Williamsport. Afternoon highs were just stuck in the 50s and 60s for a lot of the month. Overall, we were about 4.5 inches over what is considered normal for rainfall for the month of May. But when the season changed, so did our weather pattern. It ended up being a very dry summer last year, and by the end of summer, all of northeastern and central PA was under a drought watch. Next week, we take a look at severe weather season here in northeastern and central Pennsylvania. Thanks for joining me this week. I'm Allie Gallo.
Thanks, Allie. Stormtracker 16 Cloud to Ground comes back in a minute. All right, welcome back to Cloud to Ground, and we have Anthony here and his whiteboard. That's his specialty. The guy's got a right brain that's cranking always. He's creative, and he's here to talk about why it's been a little drippy recently.
In this edition of Whiteboard Weather, we are getting into a wide-ranging topic: what makes our weather? We have a lot to talk about. Roll the intro. there are a lot of things that cause our weather. We're not going to get into everything. We only have about 5 minutes in this segment. But what I want to talk about is, you know those waves that Joe Snedeker always shows? Those waves in the atmosphere? They're called Rossby waves, where you see a dip in the jet stream and then the jet stream bumps back up. We see warmer air. What causes all of that? There is a cause. It's not just all made up. But there's two different factors that decide how wavy a pattern gets. The first one actually is the Earth. I'm gonna draw a little bit of land here because Earth has land. We're gonna draw Florida. I always start off with drawing Florida and then the Gulf of America. Okay, so now you know that's the Earth. I think that's good enough, right? So the Earth, at the poles of the Earth, there's less distance for something to rotate, but at the equator, see how fast that is? So the spin on Earth is faster at the poles than it is on the equator. So though there's more spin, the further north you go in the northern hemisphere and the further south you go in the southern hemisphere. The second thing that causes spin is the actual column of air in the atmosphere. Let's say this is the top of the atmosphere, we call the tropopause, about 40,000 feet up in the air, and this is the surface. This column of air versus this column of air, two different things. And well, why would this column of air be shorter than this column of air? I thought the surface was here, the tropopause is here. What causes these differences? Well, if you haven't caught on already, there are mountains, which is why I want to flip the whiteboard. So let's talk about these two features competing against each other. So you have mountains here. Let's say you have winds coming out of the west. We call these westerlies in our part of the atmosphere. So winds are blowing this way. Well, there's only one way for winds to go if they encounter a mountain. It's over the mountain. As long as the wind speeds are fast enough, they can climb over the mountain. Well, you just went from a really thick atmosphere that stretches 40,000 feet, let's say, to 30,000 feet or 20,000 feet. Doesn't matter the exact distance. So you saw some shrinking here. Well, that column air just went like this to more of a flat pancake like this, meaning it's spinning a little bit less, right? And now that it's spinning a little bit less, in order to preserve the conservation of spin, something has to happen. So your spin is decreasing. What did we say about the Earth? In order, the more spin, where's the more spin? The spin, higher spin, is further north in the atmosphere. It's further north in the northern hemisphere, further south in the southern hemisphere. So the air deflects north. And that is the beginning of our wave that we're talking about. So this air, you picture into the board is north, it heads north. And that's the first part of our spin. Now, the air comes over the mountain, and now it shrinks back into this tighter column of air. So the spin increases. In order to increase, the air deflects south. I'm going to show you what it looks like looking down, a bird's eye view on the map. So this is the map of the United States, and we have the Rocky Mountains that are right here. This is Texas. And these are the mountains that provide our weather. So you have air that's coming in from the Pacific Ocean. When it encounters these mountains, the winds come like this, they move north above the mountains, they go down south after that column of air gets stretched, and then you get these waves that form. And with these waves comes the formation of little low pressure areas, and these propagate towards us here in Pennsylvania. So that's where the start comes from. And eventually they tag in with some moisture coming in from the Gulf, and that gives them the spark to potentially develop into more developed systems. So it all is because of these mountains that we get these waves of flow, and these low pressures end up hitting us. Honestly, I should have drawn the low pressures with red. That's the correlation we make. Low pressure, red. I don't even know why we do that. But yeah, so these are mainly formed off these mountains, and they create ripple effects and eventually crash us here in Pennsylvania. So yeah, that's this edition of Whiteboard Weather. Hopefully you learned something new. Weather doesn't happen out of nowhere. It's not just, things don't happen for no reason. Things happen for a reason. Hopefully I was able to explain it in depth enough for you to understand today.
All right, thanks, Anthony. We appreciate it. Now, we're nothing without you, the people, sending in these great pictures. So Jeremy's here, and he's going to take a look at all of your great photos. Coming up next, don't you go anywhere. All right, welcome back to Cloud to Ground. Jeremy's here to explain your photos and all the good weather phenomenon that's been going on. Hit it, Jeremy.
Every week, the weather tells a story, and sometimes the best way to see that story is through your eyes. Welcome back to This Week in Weather, where your photos help tell the story of the skies above us. We'll take a look at the past with photos sent in by viewers just like you, right here on the Plus. From dramatic skies to quiet, beautiful moments, these snapshots capture what it really felt like to live through this week's weather. And as we go, we'll do more than just admire the view. We'll break down what's happening behind the scenes, turning some of those complex weather patterns into easy to understand science. So let's get started with this incredible shot. This one came in from Maggie Miller from Burlington Township in Bradford County. And of course, the pink and purple hues are gorgeous. But if you look really close, you can see a faint ray. And what you're seeing here is a light pillar. This is a vertical beam of light. It looks almost like it's reaching up into the sky. And there's something magical about it, like a spotlight frozen in place. But this isn't anything supernatural. It's all about ice. Light pillars form when there are tiny, flat, hexagonal, six-sided ice crystals drifting through the air, usually on calm and cold nights. These ice crystals act like miniature mirrors, reflecting the light from the ground, often from streetlights, but in this picture, I think it's from the sun slipping below the horizon. Straight up into the sky is that projection of that sun. So pillars are not actually beams of light, but an optical illusion, and the result is that glowing column that you can see here. Thank you, Maggie, for sending in that picture. This one is another light pillar that came in from Kim. Thank you, Kim, for capturing this one in Montrose. This is a little bit more pronounced than the one that came in from Maggie's shot. Notice in this picture from Kim, it looks a little bit like a rainbow. This is called a rainbow pillar, and it's quite rare. While most pillars are caused by reflection, some rainbow pillars can occur if light is also refracted within those ice crystals. That means it's bent, separating the white light into its component spectral colors, just like a prism. Light pillars typically take on the color of the light source that creates them because they're formed by reflection, acting like a giant vertical mirror in the sky. So they mimic the original hue of the natural or artificial light hitting the ice crystals. The color and the size can vary based upon how far away you are from the source and how the light interacts with the density of the ice crystals in the air. And in both Kim and in Maggie's case, the light pillars were pinkish red, which indicates that it was projecting the color of the setting fiery sun. Now, as it gets warmer, light pillars like these become less likely to show up because they require specific conditions: freezing temperatures, high humidity, and calm air to allow those plate-shaped ice crystals to really suspend in the air and reflect the light. Although they are most common in the winter, they can also occur in other seasons like spring and even summer if temperatures in the atmosphere are cold enough to create ice crystals near the ground. Now, I'll always end this segment with a photo that made me smile, and I want you to take a look at this. This picture came in from TJ Finley in Scranton. Thank you for sending in this picture, TJ. It looks like it's a cloud shaped just like a heart, drifting gently across the sky. It's one of those simple, fleeting moments you could easily miss, but when you catch it, it sticks with you. Clouds are always changing, sculpted by high winds above us, and every now and then they line up just right to give us a little something extra special. A small reminder that even in a busy week of weather, there's still a little beauty overhead if you take a second to look up. And that's a look back at this week in weather, captured through your eyes in moments, in colors, and in skies from where you live. Keep those photos coming because you never know, you might see your snapshot featured right here next week. I can't wait to see what you send in. I'm Jeremy Lewan.
All right, thanks, Jeremy, and thank you, team. We all did the segments for you and hope you're enjoying this because we're going to do it every single week. Yeah, we're overworked, but in a good way, and we love it. So keep everything coming, keep your eyeballs coming, and we'll see you here next week. Thank you for joining us on WNEP Plus. We are proud to serve.